a Valentine, birthday greetings, bottle of wine. If I went out to corner the creek, would you lock the door? Will you still feed me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64? When your lights are on, you can hear the sweater by the fireside. Sunday morning, go for a ride. To in the garden, digging the weeds. Who could ask for more? Waste to feed me, waste to feed me when I'm 64. Send me a postcard, drop me a line, stay calling a few. In the garden, digging the weeds, who could ask for more? When I'm 64, every summer we could rent an art cottage in the Isle of Wight. It's up to them. We shall scream fantasy. Grandchildren on me. Vera, Chuck, and Dave. Please to feed me, please to feed me when I'm 64.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce a good friend of mine, Susan Roberts, a true believer. Rainy, sad day as it is, I'm smiling and right on. Thanks everybody for coming out, and this is still a work in progress, so excuse the cool concrete. Working on it. And it was Susan's birthday on April 10th. Happy birthday, Susan.
Yeah.
And a while back she told me she was going to do stand-up comedy in Hot Springs, Montana. And I said, well, there's a given there. It's like, first of all, sometimes this place can be a joke. And I said, stand-up comedy. I said, what do you do? Get up on your feet? Stand up. It's my pleasure to welcome Susan Roberts. Thank you, Susan.
It's really rough to do comedy in your hometown. Thank God I've got lights. I can't see you. Oh, hi, Leela. Come on in. So, is my mic on? Hello? Testing to no, test.
Oh, we can hear you.
That's what happens now when I get up. I'm 64. I'm like, test. Is that working? Recently, a girlfriend of mine said, so, Susan, are you dating? And I was like, are you talking about my muffin? And she said, what are you talking about? And I said, yes, I'm doing the doughboy. I used to pop out of bed like toast. Woo! Now I pop out and then I'm like, okay, we're gonna, oh yeah, yeah, takes a while. I was born in Great Falls, Montana in 1952, and my mother leaned up on one arm and she said, doctor, is it a girl or a boy? And he said, it's a girl, and she's obviously a goofball. I was precocious. I came out singing and dancing. My father loved it. He promoted it. He'd play games with me with words. He'd say, Susie, say equilibrium. I'm like 2. So I'd run out on the porch, and I'd come back in, and I'd go, Ika-wika-wa! And he just loved it. And of course, my mother's standing in the background going, oh, God. I learned 2 lessons from the clothesline. 1, it's not good for doing tightrope walking on. And secondly, I got tied to it when I was 18 months old because I had a propensity to run away to the bar where I would get pop and candy. And I'd be down there sitting on my stool, and all of a sudden the door would fly open and there would be my mother. And she literally tied me to the clothesline. I could run back and forth. That's it. At the age of 6, I was positive that I was going to be an opera singer. I wasn't allowed to practice in the house. So I went outside and I climbed a tree. And I hear, Susan Faye. And when your mom uses your middle name, what, Mom? Susan, the neighbors just called, and they think that somebody's skinning a cat in the backyard. So that was over with. You know, that career ended. So I was actually very introspective as a 10-year-old. I had designed a spaceship, which my stepfather said he would take to Boeing when I was finished. So I was working on it really hard. My stepfather was really good to me that way because up on the ranch, I said, Dad, I really want a swimming pool. He said, I got a stock tank right here, Suze. I'm like, no, I want cement. I want a deep end. I want a low end. And he said, well, if you dig it, I'll put the concrete in. So I was out there, I was pacing it off, measured it, and I'm sure my parents laughed their butts off as I'm out there shoveling for days in the hard prairie clay. And finally I went in the house and I said, okay, stock tank's good. But all of a sudden, when I turned 12 years old, something happened. You know, and nature took over and it was like, boom, boom, boom. And by the age of 15, I was a cheerleader and a wannabe slut. Because all the really, really, really popular girls were sluts. I didn't even know what a slut was, but I was determined that I was going to become one. So I got lucky, and the school Casanova asked me for a date. We went to the county fair. I mean, I took my time. I dressed, you know, made sure the buttons would come undone really easy. Checked the zippers. So he's at the fairway getting us drinks at the fair, right? And I see him coming at me, and I'm like in a scene from a movie, and we're running towards each other, and I'm naming our children, and I'm thinking that we're going to live together forever. And so anyway, the drive home was 30 miles. And of course, we stopped on a dirt road. I don't know how many children have been conceived on dirt roads in Montana, but I'm telling you, it's a big number. And so we looked at the stars for 30 seconds, and then we're on it, right? And he unbuttons my shirt. And I'm thinking, we're going there. I'm going to slut him. And then he reaches back to unsnap my bra, you know, one of those cross your heart Playtex. And he stops. And I'm like, what's wrong? And he's like, well, I said, aren't you gonna He's like, no. No. You're a good girl. I lived with that for a week, right? All the sluts at school are like, good girl, good girl. And I got an opportunity. There was a dance 30 miles away in Shelby, Montana. And I went and I had my first illicit beer, a whole beer. And then the Rolling Stones, let's spend the night together. Now I need you more than ever. I was like, But I really danced for the first time, you know, because in grade school we were always like, and then about 8th grade, it was like, do the surfer, and you know. So I was like dancing to Let's Spend the Night Together, and this guy says, hey, I'll drive you home. And I'm like, okay. And he drove me home, and we went to the airport, which is a lot like the Hot Springs airport, except we had an outhouse. And we're parking, and he starts unbuttoning my shirt, right? And I'm like, I can't do this, I'm a good girl. And I start buttoning it back up, and he's unbuttoning, and I'm buttoning and buttoning, and finally he said, all right, I'm taking you home. And I go in the house, and I go into the bathroom, and I turn the light on, and I'm like, oh my God. I have a huge hickey on my neck. And it's August. I can't wear a turtleneck. My reputation is ruined. So the next morning I go to breakfast like this. And my dad is like, Susan, what's wrong with you? Oh, I slept wrong. You know, my neck is all kinked up, and it'll be okay. Not a problem. All of a sudden my dog ran in the room, and I'm like, Fluffy! You're grounded. So I had a job at the time. So Monday morning I go up to work for Mrs. O'Laughlin, who's 80. Homesteader, came in, you know, Conestoga wagon, the whole deal. I loved her. And I would cook and clean for her Monday through Friday. And I'm thinking, she doesn't know what a hickey is, right? So at lunch, she says to me, Susan, what happened to your neck? And I said, I was frying chicken this weekend, and it splattered. And she's like, oh, mm-hmm. And then she's walking into the living room to watch an episode of Edge of Night, and I hear her say, I hired a slut? So at 20 years of age, I decided to go to welding school. I had a choice, daycare, welding. Daycare, welding, welding, welding. So it was a model city program where they were trying to help people who couldn't get jobs. And I was having trouble getting jobs because I had a shaved head, a pierced nose, and I was wearing designer 1930s clothes. But they said, okay, Susan, you go to school for a week, and if you pass, if you do all the tests, you're going to welding school. So my final test was I had to run a bead on an arc welder. And I wore my fabulous crepe red full length with sparkles. And I had a scarf over my head. And I walked in, and the guy looked at me like, are you sure you want to do this? And I said, yes. And I picked up that stick, and I did the bead, and the guy went, that's perfect. So for my first day of school, I'm in now, right? I'm going to school. It's a tech school. I got my brand new steel-toed boots, got on my work jeans, got a red leather ball cap, right? Pierce knows I'm at the bus stop and this guy goes to me, "What country are you from?" And I said, "I'm from America. Where are you from?" So I walk into this room, right, in the tech building, the welding shop, and I walk in, and there are 15 big burly guys. And they're looking at me, and I'm looking at them, and they're looking at me, and I'm looking at them. And this guy sidles over to me and he goes, "Hey, chickie, are you in the wrong room?" And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm going to be a welder." And he said, "Well, do you suck cock?" And I said, "Well, occasionally." "And you?" They never bothered me again. My teacher was, the welding teacher had been the foreman of the IDS tower in Minneapolis, right? I mean, and he was like, Susan, am I a chauvinist pig, Susan?" And I was like, "Yes, you are, but it's okay. It's okay." He let me do whatever I wanted. And I dumpster dived in the dumpster at the machine shop and filled my locker with metal. You know, because it was like, I'm gonna make sculptures. And he let me do it. I mean, I could have been a pipe welder, but I was like, no, I want to make trees. So my first husband told me that my walk reminded him of something between Marilyn Monroe and a farm girl. So I was like, okay. You know, for a portion of my life, I was a nude model for art classes. And it's funny how being naked when you have clothes on is worse for me than, you know, because I would like walk into a room like this, jump up here, throw my clothes over there. And I did this for 5 years and it paid really well. $3 an hour. That was good back then, okay? But one time, I had on you remember those Indian bedspreads they made into dresses that you tied behind your neck? And I'm walking down the street with my co-op food. And these two guys go by me and they're like, ooh, yeah. I'm like, what are they, like the peaches? What the hell? And then I looked down and my breast was laying in the peaches. Another time I was in a park shopping and I was wearing like, I love these, they were really baggy, sheer kind of pants, right? And this lady comes up to me and she goes, "Honey, your ass is showing." And I'm talking about I was naked for 5 years, you know what I'm saying? I've been a closet plucker most of my life. And it all started with a neighbor child. I said, "Hey Timmy, how are you today?" And he goes, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm your neighbor, Timmy, it's Susan." And he goes, "Susan doesn't have a mustache." I have a carry permit now. I have a conceal. I can pluck any time. And it's happened. You know, you're talking to somebody, you're like, I know what you're saying. Excuse me 1 minute, please. You know what? It would have really helped Hansel and Gretel. You know, birds eat breadcrumbs, right? They're lost in the forest, right? Hansel, Hansel, look! I found one of Mommy's chin hairs! How do you know it's one of Mommy's chin hairs and not one of Daddy's nose hairs? Because Mommy's chin hairs are like Brillo pads and they're 3 feet long. So a friend of mine said to me, Susan, you call bullshit before it hits the ground. And I said, I know, I learned that on the ranch. Dad, bullshit! I did. Farming community, right? I've begun negotiations with Dad recently. I was like, look, let's go have a latte, okay? Wine? Tequila? Your cloak's looking a little dark. Let's get you, you know, the newest thing is burqas. I don't like the cultural reason for burqas, but I'm telling you, I love them because every woman looks fat. I don't care if she turns sideways and she's a line, she looks fat in a burqa. They're tense, right? Now, burqas actually came to America. They'd be paisley in a heartbeat. Right? Rainbow. Purple. Yeah. Bling.
Good tie-dye burqa.
Tie-dye burqa. Rainbow burqas. Clothing is another issue, you know. I had 2 daughters that were only 22 months apart, and it was hysterical. One of them was real conservative country. The other one was Madonna / Leonard Cohen, Cyndi Lauper, Two Live Crew, you know what I'm saying? And then I had another child, and I didn't realize that when you have a baby at 38, they are going to be going into puberty when you're going into menopause. Yeah. I didn't know where she hid some of the knives, and she didn't know where I hid some of the knives. You know, to keep us safe. We still haven't found them. Old age is interesting, it really is. Because you're not really old in your head. And everybody's, you know, you talk to old people, they're like 100 and you're like, I don't feel old. And it's true, you don't. In your head, you're like, I can still jump that fence, right? I did come of age in the 70s. Woo! Yeah. Our skirts were up to, you know, like here. Oh my God. I just recently saw an article in the Missoulian that they have restricting the height of skirts and straps. Come on, we already fought that battle in the 70s, right? When the principal was like with his ruler and you're like, hey, don't look up there. But I never much wore a bra. And I regret that during that period of time I didn't get to burn one. You know what I mean? Because I think they're ridiculous. But now I'm thinking Hot Springs could have a bra burning parade. Yeah. we could light them on fire. Well, no, the mayor would probably follow us. He's the fire chief. Come on, you know. Well, I worked on this show for like 2 weeks. This is my first
show that there are no canned jokes in it. These are all mine. And they actually came from parts of my life, but I'm not going to get into details here, okay? I don't drink hard liquor anymore. Last time I got divorced, 1992, the courthouse was like a couple blocks from the Charlie B's bar. And I got divorced on Christmas Eve, so I said, I need a B-52. And I would love to drink one now. I'd like to be 52. But I called my sister up one morning when I was in Phillipsburg, and I said, Sissy, what were we doing last night? My jaw is sore. And she's like, we were drinking cowboy cocksuckers. I didn't have to eat protein for a week. I woke up one morning feeling like I had been sitting on rocks, right? I'm like, what the hell? So I call up my buddy Tim, and I'm like, Tim, what were we doing last night? He goes, we were doing shots of sex on the beach, and then we drove all over northwest Montana trying to find a sand. I never touch tequila anymore. Tequila. I called my sister up and I'm like, Sissy, I need a favor. She's like, what, Susan? Where are you? I need a bus ticket. I'm in Mexico. How'd you get to Mexico? I don't know. I had a shot or two of tequila. I have accepted Jesus into my life, and my mother would be happy about that because she thinks we're not going to the same heaven. And she doesn't know that, of course, I would allow anyone into my life who can churn water into wine. I would love to be able to go into the bar, sit down, and have the bartender say, what can I get you? And it'll be water, no lemon, no ice. And then he turns his back and he's like, where'd you get that wine? Have you accepted Jesus into your life? I just want to thank all of you for coming, and I want to thank John and Kelly for making this fabulous little space. And I had one final little conversation with Beth, and I said, hey, you know that where they say that the young die, early? And he said, you weren't that good.